Hello and welcome to Moneylife News and Views. I am Debashis Basu. Mr. Vivek Velankar is the president of Pune-based Sajag Nagrik Manch. He wanted to know over the years how much has State Bank of India written off as bad loans. So he filed a query under the Right to Information Act, and as expected, SBI refused to give him the information under the absurd logic that collating that information would be waste of resources. Now, as you know, write-offs, bank write-offs are very, very important figures. These figures, just like advances and deposit figures, should be available at the click of a mouse. But SBI is a government-controlled entity, wants to keep even basic information like this well hidden from the public. Mr. Velankar then tried another tactic. As he told Moneylife, I am a shareholder of SBI, and so I asked for this information, and at the bank, in that case, shared it with him. On 14 July, Moneylife's Yogesh Sapkale wrote an exclusive article based on the startling data that SBI gave Mr. Velankar. The startling part of the data was not how much money they had written off. I'll come to it, what was the shocking part of it. In 8 years between FY 12-13 to financial year 19-20, SBI has written off a massive 1.23 lakh crore, but it managed to recover just about 7% of it, or 8,969 crore in this period. The question is, did SBI give Mr. Velankar the relevant figures? After our article was published, a banking insider pointed me to page number 65 of State Bank's this year's, that is 2020 annual report. That page contains a table under the section Stressed Asset Management, which includes two rows. One is cash recoveries / upgradations, and the other is write-offs. If you compare the figures of that table with that the SBI shared with Mr. Velankar, you will get a shock. The figures are widely different. For example, in FY 18-19, SBI wrote off an amount of 27,225 crores. That's what they told Mr. Velankar, whereas the actual figure in the annual report was 58,905 crore. Recoveries were 815 crore, according to the letter written to Mr. Velankar, while the figure for cash recoveries they're showing in annual report is 31,000 crore. Now, I'm not for a moment suggesting that SBI deliberately reported different figures, one in annual report and another set of figures that they gave Mr. Velankar. But the divergence is too huge and invites suspicion. In fact, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if there are differences that are not easily accounted for. The former banker who alerted me to this difference is not at all surprised. He says there is inadequate and incorrect information and total lack of transparency in all aspects of banking operations, not just SBI's. Unfortunately, secrecy and concealment of information is inbred among bankers, especially public sector bankers, and even the Reserve Bank of India, which actually protects the banks and prevents them from releasing information. They deliberately conflate between confidentiality of individual accounts, which is required, and the aggregate data that can neither be confidential nor difficult to share in these days of computerized and interlinked operations. But even that aggregate data of defaulters, how much is NPA is written off, they are not willing to share. After all, it took many years and dogged fights by RTI warriors like Suresh Gandhi, former Central Information Commissioner, Girish Mittal and Subhash Chandra Agarwal, who went right up to the Supreme Court to force the RBI to release RBI inspection reports from banks when there was absolutely no reason why these reports, at least 1-year-old ones, cannot be released, cannot be shared under RTI or even voluntarily uploaded in the RBI website or the bank's website. For those who have not followed this fight, RBI had for years refused to share bank inspection reports under the argument that it holds them, the reports, and whatever information he has about individual banks, it holds them in a fiduciary capacity. And RBI fought activists all the way to the Supreme Court defending that stance. But the Supreme Court had ruled back in 2015, about 5 years ago, that the banking regulator cannot withhold information citing fiduciary relationships. But under the rockstar governor, Mr. Raghuram Rajan, and later under Urjit Patel, RBI completely refused to obey the Supreme Court orders. Now, the previous governor, that Mr. Patel, had even issued a new disclosure policy that restrained citizens from inspecting, supervising, and scrutinizing reports of banks or other financial institutions. That's the kind of secrecy they want to operate in. The activists had to go back to the Supreme Court. Finally, in May last year, the Supreme Court warned the RBI. Though we could have taken a serious view of RBI's continuing to violate the directions issued by this court, we have given them a last opportunity to withdraw the disclosure policy. After that warning, and after a warning that they'll be held in contempt of court and some RBI officials will be put behind bars, the RBI appeared to fall in line and released a few heavily redacted reports. But I'm told it has started stalling once again. It just does not want to share information, no matter the Supreme Court's ruling and no matter the simple rule of law. From the ministry to the regulator of banks to the banks themselves, we need to create a culture of collating accurate information and sharing it transparently. Unless we do that, there will not be informed debate and only a patchwork of solutions marred by vested interests. In a recent speech, the RBI governor has talked about offsite surveillance, smell the distress much before, and initiate preemptive actions. He talked about use of market intelligence inputs. Now, that's all very fine, it's very radical, but market intelligence is a two-way street. The RBI will get a lot by sharing information first. Thanks for watching.